I'd like to welcome you to the 2025 Southeast Regional Fruit and Vegetable Conference. My name is Justin Shealy. I'm a County Extension Agent in Eccles County for the University of Georgia. I'd like to take the time to thank WorkSource Georgia for sponsoring the 2025 Vegetable Educational Conference. Okay, a big thank you to the Georgia Vegetable Commission. Most of the research presented has been funded in part by the Georgia Commodity Commission for Vegetables. These are your dollars at work. All right, with announcements out of the way, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Babesh Dutta, and he will be talking about diseases.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Great. So welcome to the vegetable session. So this is the first session, and over the next 1.5 hours or 2 hours, you'll be learning what we've been doing in UG extensions and what are the important things we'll be extending. So I'm a vegetable pathologist, extension vegetable pathologist, housed in Tifton. I work on close to 10 to 12 vegetables. Each vegetable may have a number of diseases, but today I cannot show all the data. But I'm going to give you some of the highlights what we've been learning on some of the important diseases. If I miss something, you can speak up, and I'll be happy to talk about some of the fungicide programs of those particular commodity or diseases. So, with that, the title of my talk is Lessons Learned. What are the lessons I have learned over the last 5-6 years on certain vegetable disease programs and fungicide programs? What are the new fungicides been in the market and how they are performing? So the first disease which I'll be talking today is Fusarium wilt. As you know, Fusarium wilt in melon is the #1 disease in melon. National Watermelon Association has prioritized repeatedly for the last 7 years as this #1 disease. The problem with this disease, when it's get into the field, if the pathogen gets into your field, it's very hard to get rid of. And as the disease suggests, as the name suggests, it causes complete wilting of the plant. Now, when the wilting will occur? Wilting may occur at any crop growth stage, but based on my experience, I've seen wilting either right few weeks after transplanting or right after fruit set. So this is what you're going to see. You see wilting of the plant, and you will also see the wilting will occur in pockets. You will not see random plants wilting here and there. You will see cluster of plants wilting on one part of the field, and cluster of plants will be wilting on other parts of the field. So because the soil-borne nature, these guys move in clusters. So I repeatedly do Fusarium wilt trials with respect to different fungicides and all. Today afternoon, I also be presenting some of the Fusarium work with Mr. Tucker Price on how to utilize grafts against Fusarium wilt. But today, in this talk, I'll be talking only about fungicides and fungicide programs against Fusarium wilt. So what's new in the market? Propulse. Propulse is a peanut fungicide. It has got a label in melons recently. And Propulse is a premix of a fluparum, which is Luna, and prothioconazole, which is Proline. And how we are using Propulse in a program with Miravis Prime, which is another new fungicide, got recently labeled for a soil use in melons against Fusarium wilt. So I'm going to show you a data that looks quite interesting. So look at our non-treated check. So close to 72 to 74% of our plants were dead after planting, and each and every plant were inoculated. So make sure each and every plant is inoculated. It's with a very highly virulent Fusarium strain. Look how Proline did. Proline is a growth standard. Proline is still effective. If a Proline used at plant as a drench, it was effective. It significantly reduced the disease. But when we use Propulse in the same way as a Proline, the disease reduction was significantly improved compared to Proline. Now let's look at these two programs, which is very interesting. So we used Propulse and Miravis Prime in different ways. So we started with Propulse again at plant soil drench. This is how it's registered. And Miravis Prime, we came a week after Propulse application over the top as a broadcast, as a high volume spray. So the idea was using a high volume spray to wash down some of the product in the ground, in the transplant hole, and to provide prolonged protection against Fusarium. When we used this, it significantly reduced the Fusarium incidence compared to single application of Propulse and Proline itself. So this program is, if you use Propulse with Miravis Prime, you will get a benefit compared to when you use it alone. Now, other way, look at this program. Miravis Prime is also labeled as a pre-plant soil application. So I use Miravis Prime as a pre-plant soil banded application. So what we did, we prepared a bed and we punched holes, transplant holes, and over those transplant holes, we put Miravis Prime as a 7-inch band. And afterwards, a day after, we transplanted. So that's how Miravis Prime was applied here. And then we came back with Propulse right after transplanting. So only 2 applications. So Miravis Prime prior to transplanting, Propulse right after transplanting. 8 further reduced fusarium wilt compared to this application. So long story short, if you use Propulse and Miravis Prime in certain way, we'll have a significant reduction in fusarium wilt. So this is what we are recommending. There are 2 different programs. We can use Propulse and Miravis Prime. First program, start with the Miravis Prime as a pre-plant soil banded spray, right, a day before transplanting. Come back with Propulse a day right after transplanting as a drench, and then Miravis Prime can be again used a week after Propulse application as a broadcast. Okay. That this is one program we are recommending. The second program we are recommending that you don't have to use Miravis Prime as a pre-plant. Start with Propulse at plant soil drench. And then you have 2 more options of applying Miravis Prime a week later. So a week later, you can do Miravis Prime broadcast over the top, and 1 more Miravis Prime application. This is an optional. If you want, you can do it. But in both the programs, we think that you're going to get a similar benefit of using. Depending on your production system, depending on how equipment you got, I think these 2 programs will fit. So this is what I have about Fusarium. I'm going to move to another disease of powdery mildew. Powdery mildew is quite endemic to Georgia. We see powdery mildew a lot, especially on squash and the pumpkins and so forth, but not on melons. Powdery mildew appears right after fruit set. So regarding this, a 2023 trial, we looked at different products. Some of the stronger products which I can show you, Vivando from BSF and Gatton, 2 top products against powdery mildew. Okay, Luna, any of the Luna products, Luna premixes also is effective in reducing powdery mildew. Quintec still have some juice left in it. So if you have a Quintec, use it early in the season. This is how it looked in 2024. I did try some experimental products, did not look too great. Vivando is still going very strong. Vivando is still working. Quintec is still did some. It was able to reduce the disease significantly, but not as great as Vivando. Torino did not look too great in terms of final disease severity, but when you look at the entire AUDPC, which is entire disease over a season, it did something. So this is a fungicide efficacy ranking of all the powdery products over the last 4 and 5 years. Again, I put Vivando and Gatton as top tier products, followed by Prolivo, Luna products, any of the Luna Flex, Experience, Tranquility, whatever you're going to use. They have some moderate level of efficacy against this disease. Proline is an excellent product, a single product. The only thing which I fear about is a single product. It's not a premix. Proline is effective against not only powdery, it is also effective against gum, it's also effective against anthracnose. It's a multi-tier product. So we like this product, but again, since it's a single chemistry, you may have a risk of resistance development to it if you overuse it. Miravis Prime and Aprovia Top, we use it a lot in cucurbit foliar disease program. They do have a moderate level of efficacy against powdery mildew. Quintec and Torino, I place it at moderate to less, depending on how you use it. How later or how early you use it, you may get some help with Quintec and Torino, but not a whole lot. Downy mildew. Before I talk about downy mildew, I want to talk about, look at this one. Based on a recent research, we found that cucurbit downy mildew is caused by 2 different lineages, or 2 different pathotypes. The one pathotype is this one. Look at the green ones. It is this particular downy mildew. It causes diseases on watermelon, squash, and pumpkins, okay? And this downy mildew, the one in the red, is causes disease in cucumber, okay? So this red one, the lineage 2 downy mildew, appears in Georgia first compared to lineage 1. And based on different fungicide trials, what we have found that all the products that work on lineage 2 will also work on lineage 1. To make a long story short, if a downy mildew in cucumber if a product is effective on downy mildew on cucumber, it will also be effective on downy mildew on squash and watermelon and so forth. With one exception, Presidio. Presidio will not work on downy mildew of cucumber, but it still has some efficacy on downy mildew on melons. Okay? And Presidio, our melon growers use it against Phytophthora. So if they use Presidio as a broadcast, they will also get an additional efficacy against downy mildew. So this is the ranking of downy products. So Orondis premixes, great, still going strong. Illumin is moderate. Ranman still going strong. Previcus Flex is fine. Presidio is only effective in lineage 1, which is watermelon 1. Bravo is moderate. We recommend to use Bravo either as a rotation or a tank mix partner with these products. Phosphate, all the phosphates work similar and they have a similar level of efficacy. What we recommend, if you want to use phosphate, use it as a rotation or a tank mix partner with these products. All right, moving along to gummy. This is 2023 trial results. All the products, premixes. In the gummy, we rely a lot on premixes of 7s, 11s, 7s and 12s and 9s. So what we have, you can see here Luna Flex and Luna Experience. Luna Experience is a traditional Luna product against against gummy. Luna Flex is a newer product, and we see no clear difference in efficacy in reducing gummy with Luna Flex. They have a same level of efficacy. Inspire Super, Approvia Top, they do great. They are still going strong. Bravo by itself is good. Miravis Prime is, numerically, it looks far better than all the other products. This is 2023. 2024, similar data. We have, again, Luna Flex and Luna Experience did great. Approvia Top, Miravis Prime, Inspire Super. So all these products, all these premixes, they're working great. The good thing with these products is that they also have efficacy against powdery and anthracnose. So if you spray for gummy, you'll also be protected against other foliar fungal diseases. Okay, this is a ranking of gummy products. See all the premixes up there. Miravis Prime, Luna, and Luna Flex, Proline, and Inspire Super, they're highly to moderately effective, followed by chlorothalonil, then Top Guard, Approvia, and Merivon, they're okay. Tebuconazole, Mangozeb, they're less effective. Tebuconazole, we have a widespread efficacy, resistance issue in gummy in Georgia. Frac Group 11s and some of the Frac 7s do not work at all. Okay, this is an example. This is my check plot. This is a fungicide program with Miravis Prime. You can see clear difference in the improved efficacy. This is a fungicide program with Inspire Super and Miravis Prime. You will not see a much difference among them, so they are equally better. All right, moving along. I'm going to talk a little bit about anthracnose. Last year, we were funded by USDA and NIFA, Specialty Crop Research Initiative, on anthracnose issue. Anthracnose in cucurbits, it's a big problem in the East Coast, particularly in cucumber, not more so in melons. So we have a consortium of 7 northeastern and southeastern states. We grouped together and we started working on this problem. I'm going to give you some of the updates about the cucurbit anthracnose issue. So this is how cucumber anthracnose look on cucumber. Cucurbit anthracnose looks on cucumber. You'll see short hull symptoms on foliage. If the pathogen gets on your fruits, it's going to rot your fruit. Okay, even a single infected fruit in a bin with all the healthy fruits can contaminate the entire bin, similar to Phytophthora and Pythium. So this is anthracnose symptoms in melons. You will see the small lesions. These lesions will look similar to sometimes downy. And then if it again gets on the watermelon fruit, it will rot your fruit. So this is anthracnose on watermelon leaf, and this is downy on watermelon leaf. Can you see a difference? Very hard to differentiate if they are early on. The only way you can differentiate downy from anthracnose visually is with a small lesion on the stem. Anthracnose will cause a small lesion on the stem, whereas downy will not. That's the only way we can differentiate them. Okay, with respect to products on cucumber anthracnose. So we are talking about 2 different anthracnose caused by the same species of the pathogen. One is cucumber anthracnose, another is watermelon anthracnose. They are caused by same species of the pathogen, but the sensitivity to the products are a little different. So look at the cucumber, based on the fungicide efficacy trial in 2023, we ranked the cucumber anthracnose products in this way. We have Proline and Topsin, highly moderately effective against cucumber anthracnose, followed by whatever products we spray on as a premix on gummy will also be effective against anthracnose. For example, Luna Experience, Mirvis Prime, Aprovia Top, and so forth. They are moderately effective against cucumber anthracnose. Now, question is, do we spray these products on cucumber for gummy? Cucumber do not seldom get gummy, so these products are not even sprayed on cucumber. That's one of the reasons why we see more cucumber anthracnose than watermelon anthracnose. Our cucumber growers rely mainly on Quadris and Cabrio to control this problem. And look at how Quadris is performing. Quadris, we have some level of resistance against this pathogen. So Quadris is not working at all. Cabrio still have some juice left in it. It's still working, but heavily relying on Quadris will not pay dividend against cucumber anthracnose. Let's look at how anthracnose worked on melons. In melon, Quadris is working. If you want to control anthracnose on melons, Quadris is still working. Okay, but you don't have to spray Quadris. If you rely on all the products which you spray on for gummy, it will be enough to control your anthracnose. So this is just wanted to show here the Quadris is our watermelon anthracnose is still sensitive to Quadris, whereas cucumber anthracnose is not. That's the only difference. All right. The one thing which we also found, tank mixing products. For example, Proline, since it's a top-tier product against anthracnose, we've been tank mixing with sulfur, especially macrothiol sulfur, and we saw an additive advantage of tank mixing those against anthracnose. So this is non-treated check. You can see Proline by itself reduced the disease significantly, but if you tank mix Proline with the macrothiol sulfur disperse, you will see a significant reduction from the reduction of disease compared to Proline itself. So you see an added advantage if you mix Proline with macrothiol sulfur. All right. So this is a fungicide efficacy trials in 2024 against cucumber anthracnose. Okay, same story. The things that did work were put in the box. This column is a foliar disease severity, and this column is a fruit incidence, disease incidence in the fruits. You can see Manzate. Manzate did not work at all, neither in reducing the foliar disease severity nor your fruit incidence. Bravo by itself, it is good, it did fair, but reducing foliar disease as well as a fruit incidence. Cabrio did well in reducing foliar disease, but look at fruit incidence. It was not significantly different from the non-treated check. It did not. Okay, so Cabrio may help you reducing the foliar disease, but not if you have a fruit infection. Do not expect it to perform. Whereas Proline, Sevia, Mirvis Prime, Switch, these products were not only able to reduce the foliar disease, but also fruit incidence. Okay, here are my plots. You can see Proline here. This is a non-treated check, and you can see Topsin. These two products are top-tier products against anthracnose. All right, how did this fungicide perform against in watermelon? Again, Manzate did not perform at all, whereas all the products which we got, like tebuconazole, Topsin, Cabrio, Prime, Proline, Sevia, Mirvis Prime, Switch, everything works. So the long story short is, it is easier to control anthracnose in melons as compared to your anthracnose in cucumber. If you do, what I recommended, you don't have to do anything different for watermelon. Whatever you've been spraying for gummy will also be effective against anthracnose. So you don't have to do anything extra. Whereas in cucumber, you may have to think about switching to some of the premixes that are effective against gummy in watermelon. All right, some of the plots. Look at this. This is non-treated check. This is my Manzate plot. There's no difference visually, but this is my Proline plot. Okay, moving to different commodity. Onions. Onions being the top, one of the top 2 vegetable commodities in Georgia. I should be talking a little bit on onions too. So with onions, we start with botrytis. It's an endemic pathogen. We see it every year. We start seeing, usually we start seeing botrytis around late February to early March, and then it stays throughout the season. So in botrytis, when we looked at the botrytis on different fungicides, these are the fungicides that are effective against botrytis. But the things are in red are not working, or we have a resistance. The one is Scala. Scala have stopped working against botrytis for the last 3 years. We have a new report of resistance. It's Merivon. Merivon, some of the growers used to use Merivon against botrytis in onions. We have a resistance to Merivon. So we have lost Merivon and Scala. The other thing, Luna Tranquility. In Luna, what we are recommending, instead of Luna Tranquility, move to Luna Flex, because they do have the same level of efficacy. Luna Tranquility, the issue is with Luna Tranquility, the tranquility part is actually Scala. Okay? In Luna Tranquility, the tranquility part is Scala, and we already have a resistance to Scala. If we put too much of Luna Tranquility, we'll put undue pressure on Luna. So in order to avoid that, what we are recommending, go towards Luna Flex, which is Luna and Difen. So rather than Luna Tranquility, what we are recommending, Luna Flex. Okay, this is my ranking on Stemphillium. Stemphillium is another disease that always follows botrytis. Okay, whenever you have a botrytis, you'll have a Stemphillium issue. This is how Stemphillium looks on onions. So in Stemphillium, things that do not work, Omega do not work on Stemphillium, Scala do not work on Stemphillium, Roveral do not work on Stemphillium, Merivon do not work on. These are the things that do not work. What works? Luna Flex, Inspire Super, Merivis Prime, Quadristop, and Pristine. So our onion programs are heavily relied on some of these premixes. And what we recommend, once you have a botrytis, you better switch to these heavy hitters, because after botrytis, you will have a Stemphillium coming in. And once you have a Stemphillium, if you do not spray, if you are behind your program, it will be very hard to control Stemphillium. And after Stemphillium, what happens? You will have other bacterial pathogens coming in and start rotting your foliage as well as onion bulbs. Okay, towards that, the other disease which I'll be talking today is downy mildew. Downy mildew is one of the worst disease you can see in onions. The name of the pathogen is a Parnospora destructor. There's a reason they named it a destructor. It destroys everything. So this is how the downy mildew looks on onion foliage. So when we looked at the different products in downy mildew in 2024, we found Redimil Gold Copper performing really great. Okay, reason used to be older product. It stopped working in between, but now we have seen we still have some efficacy left on the Redimil. When you use Redimil Gold Copper with Nordox, it did okay. Orondis Ultra. Our grower relies on Orondis Ultra a lot, so it did okay too. Nordox by itself, no efficacy. Omega also have good efficacy against onion downy mildews. This is the ranking over last 4 or 5 years. Omega, Redimil Gold Copper, Orondis Ultra are the moderate, have a moderate efficacy on downy mildew. Zampro also have a moderate efficacy. Things that have a low efficacy are phosphates and bravos. But phosphate as a bravo play a big role in downy mildew program. We always recommend to use phosphate and bravo as a tank mix or rotation partner with these products. So this is the program. I'll be talking a lot in my onion session, how to use this program, when to start this program. So I'm going to skip because I have just a few more minutes left. I'll move to Alternarian broccoli. Alternarian broccoli is another issue in the East Coast caused by Alternaria brassicicola, which I'm going to show. This is how the pathogen can cause to broccoli head and so forth. I have 2 minutes. 2 more minutes. Okay, I'll finish. What we have been doing, what we have shown, that this pathogen is also seed-borne. And what we have documented and addressed, that this pathogen can be transmitted from infected seed to seedlings, but also some of the fungicide-resistant isolates of this pathogen is also moving around through contaminated seeds. So what we did, we collected close to 100 seed lots from 2 common variety of broccoli and tested them in our lab. Close to 30% of these varieties are already contaminated with Alternaria. When we looked closely, we found those isolates are actually aggressive on broccoli itself. So these isolates are coming from the seed, and they're already aggressive on broccoli. When we looked at the fungicide sensitivity to azoxystrobin, which is an important fungicide that we use to control Alternaria in broccoli, they're already sensitive, are already resistant. So these resistant isolates are coming from the seeds. When we looked at their efficacy against Indura or boscalid, they are also resistant to boscalid. They're also resistant to Fontelis. So we are seeing isolates from seeds which are resistant to azoxystrobin, boscalid, and penthiopyrite. So we are seeing evidence of multiple resistance. So we have evidence of multiple fungicide resistance from group 7 and group 11 coming through contaminated seed lots. Well, we also show you some of the management, how we can do it. So when we looked at the seed treatments of broccoli seeds, contaminated broccoli seed with Endura, Miravis, and Captain, we see Miravis did a great job in reducing the seed contamination compared to Endura or Captain. So I'm done. Okay, all right. Thank you. I don't have enough time, but I have a couple of slides on how to use the broccoli in a different program, but I'll be talking a lot in my extension meetings. So if you have any other questions, feel free to ask me. So with this, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Babesh. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to the next speaker for Dr. Babesh? All right, well, Dr. Babesh will be around for questions. All right, thank you, Doc. All right, up next, we will have Ty Torrance. He will be giving an insect management update.
All right, thank you. My name is Ty Torrance. I'm a Tri-County vegetable agent, and I cover Tift, Colquitt, and Worth counties. If you're not familiar with that, it's just kind of a highly concentrated area of commercial vegetable production in Georgia, close to Tifton. The majority of my talk today is going to be for Dr. Stormy Sparks. He had previous engagements and was not going to be here today. But if you have any questions on his research, I'll direct all questions to my technician in the back, Mr. Alton. He's helping somebody with the pad right now, but we'll go ahead and get started. News on chlorpyrifos is not positive. Basically, the top paragraph here of labeled, I think I have a pointer, yeah, labeled products are products that are still out there and available, but from what I understand, they're relatively hard to get your hands on, maybe short supply. And the bottom paragraph are products that you can get and use until June 30th of this year. My understanding is we'll likely lose this in vegetable crops anyway, so I don't know if it was worth your time to try to stockpile these products and use them out for their term. Part of the reason that we don't see a lot of new products coming to market right now is the ESA, Endangered Species Act. It just trying to find the best way to navigate that, bringing products forward and how they're going to show compliance with ESA. I'm not going to belabor this point because Dr. Culpepper is going to touch on this a good bit in our later session today. It'll probably be the most important thing you hear this weekend, so make sure you stay for that. A couple of products that we are looking forward to, Nerisma from BASF and ISM 555 from Syngenta. I know that this is the exact same slide that was shown last year. The only thing we did was change the 2024 to 2025. So we're looking forward to those products, and we hope that they do get registered and become available, but still waiting on those. A couple of notes for Nerisma. Primarily will be using corn or sweet potato, just by the way it's labeled in product use. Specifically, this is on the label for potato. It mentions a 5 to 7 inch band, so it has to be in furrow, but it can't just be dribbled in furrow. It does not move well, so they're suggesting a 5 to 7 inch band and then to cover it immediately, which is probably going to be up to every operation how exactly they might accomplish that. This is how Dr. Sparks did it. He sprayed his 5 to 7 inch band and then ran over it multiple times to complete his bed process and cover the product. Some of the data from that, essentially we're looking at wireworm damage, and this is a number of holes per root, so the bigger the bar, the worse the damage. Nerisma and ISM 55 both performed well compared to bifenthrin and our check here. This is just kind of another look at it. This is root damage rating. So essentially, we're talking about marketable fruit versus unmarketable fruit. So our dark bar here would be the amount of marketable fruit in the plot. So again, Neurisma and ISM 5.5 are both performing well when used in this manner. I'm going to move on to Diamondback Moth Bioassay. We do, or Dr. Sparks does a lot of bioassays throughout the year, and they're very helpful because we can take an individual population from a field and basically subject them to multiple products at one time and come out with some very useful data looking at 72 hours after introduction mortality. The reason we wanted to show this is basically Proclaim and Radiant historically, since I've been in the game about 9 or 10 years, they have always performed very consistently across all the locations. And Diamondback Moth, if you're not familiar with it, it can build resistance very quickly, and populations vary drastically, even from field to field within the same county. But it's important to know that Proclaim and Radiant have always performed well. In some cases, products like Avant or Lanate or XRL, Torac have performed well in different places, but maybe not as consistently as Proclaim and Radiant. So this is the first location that we looked at where we saw a significant reduction in efficacy of Proclaim, and Radiant did absolutely nothing for this population. So very concerning, something that everybody needs to know. And also wanted to point out one of the newer products, the ISM 5.5, performed well in this population, and we'd very much look forward to having that product on the market to help us out with some of the resistance issues. Beet armyworm populations, we know of multiple populations tested that had resistance to coragen, and this was confirmed through lab studies as well. This graph is just showing you the reduced control with coragen where it would typically provide extremely good control. Radiant here showing good control compared to check. The important thing to take from that would be that not all populations of beet armyworm will look like this graph. We know that we're still getting control of beet armyworm in places with coragen, but if you apply coragen on a population and it doesn't work, don't keep doing it because it's probably not working and you may have some resistance. So don't double the rate and try to do it again. Maybe move to another product like Radiant or Intrepid should be very effective. Another study, heliothin adult vial test. This is corn earworm data. And if you're familiar with the adult vial test, it's been around for a very long time. It's basically just a well-studied and known way to evaluate pyrethroid efficacy on corn earworm. Here, this shows you from 2006 all the way to 2024. We're looking at efficacy of pyrethroid on corn earworm, a known dosage here being used, and this is 62% survival of those moths after they're introduced to a pyrethroid. If you're wondering how not good that is, that's very not good. Looking at limited products that we can use, especially in sweet corn, and pyrethroid plays a very big role in that because they're relatively inexpensive and have been effective on corn earworm. So very concerning. This is some work from Dr. Philip Roberts. This is cotton, and it's a 2-cry stack cotton, and he basically oversprayed it with bifenthrin and Vantacor, which is coragen. And in the plots where he oversprayed with bifenthrin, he essentially got the same control as the untreated check, which would tell us that he's getting very little control of the corn earworm there. Additional bioassay work done with corn earworm. This is a very thorough study, replicated 30 times, testing half rate, 1x rate, and a 2x rate. You won't get any better coverage, I guess, with a study like this. They're literally being dipped in the product, and then the caterpillar is introduced to the leaf with the pesticide dipped on it. These are the products that they looked at, but the data I'm going to show you is just the pyrethroid data, so just the warrior data. This population is a colony that was raised in the lab, so theoretically a virgin colony that should be susceptible, and they were. As you can see here, got very good control even at the extremely low rates, the half rate of pyrethroids. But this represents, each bar is a different location, so 9 locations where they collected larvae and introduced into the study. And really what I wanted everyone to see is this 1X right here. So 15 out of 30 would be about 50%, and there's 6 locations out of the 9 that we're only getting about 50% control. Again, very concerning, something that everybody should be aware of. So this was to address a specific concern about coragen as well. Maybe it's lost a little bit of efficacy on corn earworm. These are populations taken from sweet corn in Tifton off of one of the farms there on station. And this group of bars here is from September 17th, and this is October 5th. Essentially, the first study showed a little bit of a dip in efficacy of coragen, and he wanted to repeat the study just to make sure and confirm that. And the second study looks very similar. So really early data here, but again, cause for concern because essentially we're left with Lanate and Radiant as rotation partners, looking at sweet corn earworm control. A new pest, just wanted everybody to be aware of, cotton jacid or a cotton leafhopper. It's very small, and it can be identified or picked out by the 2 black dots on the back of its wings there. What we're concerned about in the vegetable world would be eggplant, and it can get on okra, beans, cowpeas, potatoes. But if you're familiar with it, any kind of hopper burn, maybe in peanut or something, it's a very similar pest and will cause similar damage. I have a couple pictures in just a second, but long story short, just to be aware of something new that you might see, some new symptomology, and being able to pick out the pest and know that right now we understand that neonics are effective on this pest, so think about things like a sale. This is what the damage looks like. This is fairly severe damage, but this is eggplant and then okra. So yes, it's causing a burn, but it's a little bit different look to it, and you're also going to get leaf curl or cupping upwards with this pest. And I would think it would take significant populations to cause the damage we're seeing in the pictures. So scouting is very important, and if you do feel like you have a population of these in Georgia, please let us know. We'd love to come out and confirm that and work with you. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of the research that I conducted with Dr. Taylor, who's here, I think, somewhere, working with cover in the row middles of plasticulture. There's only a couple of growers in Georgia that are doing this pretty consistently, and both are destroying or killing the cover before they plant or within a week of planting a crop. And it works very well. It's essentially working for erosion control, wind protection on those really young transplants, especially in the spring. We get a lot of wind, and it serves as a barrier to protect those from getting blown over or rubbing up against the plastic. It's holding the plastic in place, so when we get rain and there's bare dirt, it washes the dirt off the shoulder, the plastic will fly up, and it can be very expensive to manually go back and cover that plastic again. So it's working well for that, and potentially reducing our herbicide use because we have a cover there serving as a weed barrier. Like I said, a couple of growers are already doing this, but what we wanted to dig into is actually get some data off of this and show numerically the benefits that we're seeing, and also, what happens if you don't kill the cover crop? If something happens and you can't get in there and destroy it, how is that going to affect the crop in the plastic? How bad could it be, or maybe is it something that we can maintain the cover during the actual season? Multiple crops we looked at here, but today I want to talk about cucumber just because it was the cleanest data, and also we saw some things with whiteflies that were very interesting and wanted to share that with you. We were looking primarily at temperature, moisture, weed control, early season plant vigor, and then, like I said, whitefly counts. But essentially, if we leave that cover there, or even the dying cover, if you killed it within a week, spray it with Select, it's going to slowly die. It's not going to be a burn. So are we taking away any of the moisture out of the bed? Is it the crowding or shadowing, taking away some of the temperature because we want that plastic to be warm in the spring? And then plant vigor, whitefly counts. So this is what it looked like 6 days after planting. This is, if you can see this is the burn down, so it's going to be bare dirt, just essentially how majority of folks do it now. We tried to roll it very ineffectively, I will admit, but we tried to roll it just to see what that might look like. We saw a couple locations in previous years where it just, everything laid down so pretty, and it was just a huge mat of weed protection, erosion control. So interested in that. And then also leaving the cover standing. This is brown top millet. So leaving it standing, see what that's going to look like. This is 31 days after planting. This is still our bare dirt. We're using Valor in the road middles, Chateau, sorry. Chateau in the middles here. This is our rolled. It's not completely dead. It's still green, but it's not really doing a whole lot. And then this is where we left it standing, which is essentially trying to go to seed. It's a determinate crop. It's not going to continue to thrive and try to grow. It just wants to produce seed and die. So it's not doing a whole lot, but it is doing very well at holding the dirt in place and keeping the other weeds down. Temperature, there were absolutely no differences, which didn't expect to see that necessarily because in some cases the cover was over the plastic, right? So we thought we might see a reduce in temperature. We did not. Moisture, there was slight differences in moisture. This is right on the shoulder of the bed where we were looking at this. So the green cover still can take some moisture out of the shoulders, which is something you might expect. But also this is in cucumber. We did not see this in the other three crops, squash, cantaloupe, that we looked at. So this is just in cucumbers, which was interesting. But plant height early in the season, this is 7 days, no difference there. And a slight dip, but not statistically different after 18 days. So generally not affecting the growth. We still don't have good yield data off of this. It's something that we have to have the final answer on how much are we affecting this crop with the cover in the middles. But what I really wanted to show was the whitefly counts. And this is something that we were not expecting when we planted this trial. It's an evaluation we added later on, but I'm glad we did. So we're seeing, these are basic, I'm just walking down the row, I'm taking the fourth leaf down, turning it over slowly and counting adults, right? This is just adult counts. But we're seeing differences there at 6 days, not statistically, but numerical differences. 18 days, we're starting to see a statistical difference in between the burn down, rolled, and standing, almost in a stair-step manner. This trend holds for 25 days after planting, and at 31 days we lose our significance, but you can still see an effect. So like I said, the only difference in between these plots is a bare dirt in the middle versus rolled cover or standing cover. So we believe that this has to be some sort of visual effect as the whitefly goes across the field. They're just not able to pick out that cash crop that you're growing, in this case cucumber, and go in on. So these are small plots, but even in a small plot, we're seeing really big differences here, and no insecticide differences, just the cover in the middles. So something really cool and interesting. We're going to look at this again this year at multiple locations, so very interested in that. And again, the majority of the benefit with this would be erosion control. wind protection, and preventing this big number of plastic repair that we can run into if we have storms and a lot of wind in the spring, which is very common for us. So again, with the ESA, everything that Stanley's going to talk about, we're going to have to do more things to show that we're stewarding the land and protecting all of our resources, and part of that is erosion control. I think every vegetable farm I've ever been on probably could hire somebody full-time to run a dirt pan, just because we're covering a third of the land with a slick plastic film, and water runs downhill. So something that you might be interested in and have some more questions, concerns, please let us know. We'd like to work with you. Any more questions on whitefly? There will be a session Saturday, 9 to 11:30. And also snails. It's kind of a newer pest we're running into. If you have any problems with that or interest in that, please stay for a later session, 2:30 to 2:50 on snails. And with that, any questions? So he's asking if we're spraying the cover. The rolled cover, theoretically, I think you need to spray it and then try to roll it. But the standing cover, no additional herbicide to try. And like I said, the weed count, there were no differences in our burn down versus our standing cover with weed counts. There weren't a bunch of weeds germing in through that cover, but it was a really good cover. It was thick, lush cover. I think you could mess up with a bad germ situation in your cover and have a weed problem. But when the growers that are doing it right now, like I said, they're spraying Select within like a week or so of planting, and it's a slow process. It's going to slowly die, and maybe it doesn't even completely kill it. It just kind of sticks it, and it's not actively growing, thriving, but it's still standing for you to serve as a cover. Other option would be Roundup before you plant, get it washed off, and you're essentially starting a normal herbicide program in your row meadows with that. Yeah, same process would happen at the termination of the crop to then pull the plastic, start over, or use it as a second crop plastic.
All right, thank you, Ty. Up next, we will have Dr. Stanley Culpepper. He will be giving us an update on weed management, and at the end of his weed management presentation, he will transition on into our ESA talk.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Stanley Culpepper. I'm a weed scientist with the University of Georgia. Before I get started talking about weed control and herbicides, I think there's something we need to bring to light. So Ty just discussed 39 slides in 20 minutes. That would have took Stormy about 2.5 days. Right? That's science-based documentation right there now, there's no doubt. All right, so as was mentioned, I'm going to give you a herbicide update, bring you up to date on that, and then I will roll right into our ESA session. I do hope you will stay for the ESA session. It will be different than anything we've ever done. It will be interactive, and let me tell you, every single person in the United States of America that applies a pesticide will be impacted by the Endangered Species Act. And we've already been talking about it, but we're going to make sure today before you leave that you have a really good familiarity with that, all right? But for this first section, I'm going to give you a pesticide update. I'm going to talk about weed management and the things that are going on in the world of weed control. I do want to point out we have been very, very blessed. Even compared to agronomic producers, we have gained more tools for our toolbox in the last 10 years than they're even close to. And a lot of that is due to state labeling, cooperation with the Georgia fruit and vegetable growers, our pesticide manufacturers, and our farmers. So we have been very blessed with the opportunity to gain a lot of tools. Now, I did not know Ty had this in his presentation, but I am telling you the same thing. I really don't have much new to talk about today, and it's driven by several factors, but the Endangered Species Act is one of those. But what you will hear in the next section, we're beginning to break the dam to hopefully have some new tools slowly. Now remember, when you talk about regulatory moving forward versus what we want to define as moving forward is quite different. But I do see a lot of positives that are getting ready to occur, so hopefully we can get back to bringing new tools. Again, Just wanted to highlight how many awesome tools that we've gotten. Now, we do have a few changes. No new active ingredients for any specific vegetable crop, but we do have some new changes going on. I do want to mention, over on the table, we've got our circulars that we've always done. There's not a lot of difference between the 2024 circular and the 2025 circular, again, because I don't have new tools, right? But if you want to pick them up, they're on the table over there next to the wall. You're welcome to take as many as you want. I'll also point out, I think our responsibilities regulatory-wise will relax a little bit after about March. We can make some new circulars for you guys. So if there's a crop where you would like to have a circular handout that defines exactly what we think regarding research is the best management program, just let us know and we will add those crops. And that's for you agents as well. If there's something that you want, hopefully we will have time. But they will be up there, and they'll be up there through at least 2 o'clock, okay? So pick one up if you want to take one home with you. Now, let's talk about some changes. Again, no new active ingredients specifically, but let's talk about some changes. 3 of them or 4 of them are really, really good. 1 of them is bad. All right, so let's define each of those. Number 1, for the last 5 years, we've been talking to you guys about Rely. We gained Rely as a tool, really, for pre-plant burn down in plasticulture, as well as row middles for tomato, pepper, cantaloupe, cucumber, squash, and watermelon. Rely by BASF is apparently, unless it's changed in the last 2 to 3 weeks, going to be discontinued. So as soon as I found that out, I had an absolute fit because all of our labels for you in produce are tied to the Rely label. Amazingly, this is amazing, I'm not kidding, we were able to work with BASF. They were very supportive. We moved those uses over to the Liberty label. So you will actually have the same exact use pattern. The only difference, it will say Liberty versus Rely. Again, the active ingredients the same, pounds AI per gallon are the same, everything's the same. But I cannot tell you, number 1, in the world of ESA, BASF was not necessarily comfortable with trying to do that because we had the potential of losing it. But they did it, and we had it done in like a week. I've never seen that in my entire life. So again, kudos to BASF, kudos to the Department of Agriculture, kudos to the US EPA for wanting to help you as a farmer or producer or provider of tools for the toolbox. All right, I do want to mention one thing. So I'm excited about bringing Liberty now to you as a produce grower. I mentioned the fruiting vegetables and the cucurbit labels that we have. We are going to expand that. My buddy Roger Batts from IR4 is not here today, but he is absolutely critical and committed to getting new tools. We are looking at a ton of additional crops to bring you glufosinate or Liberty with. I would encourage you to let us do the research first. Remember, I showed you if you put Liberty out and you transplant a cucurbit into it within a week, you'll kill your cucurbit. So don't go rogue on us. It depends on crop, it depends on use pattern, it depends on rate, but we are doing a lot of work to advance that tool for you. Now, with that said, the people who have been using Liberty, we use it a lot for burn down, and a lot of our growers are mixing it with Roundup, right? We're doing second crop, third crop, or maybe we just got a bunch of weeds out there and we go out and we mix Roundup and Liberty. All right, I want to show you some of the research that we've done that you need to understand if you're going to mix Roundup and Liberty. Now, this is not new to us. We've been doing this in cotton for 10 to 15 years, and we do it because when we put Liberty in with Roundup, we improve control of glyphosate-resistant pigweed, we improve control of morning glory, we improve control of a lot of things, right? But what you need to understand is anytime we put 2, especially herbicides together, it's not always positive. And I'm going to give you an example, and I'm thinking about you doing burn down. We got big weeds, it's probably dry, we've got a few stresses out there. And I'm going to show you 5 weeds and how they respond. The bar on the left each time will be Roundup by itself. I'm using the maximum rate for the production practice I'm in. The second bar will be Liberty by itself. The third bar will be Liberty plus Roundup at the exact same rates. And then the fourth bar will be Roundup, and we followed with Liberty. So a sequential application. All right, so you can see right off the bat, if you look at large crabgrass and goosegrass, you better have goosegrass on your radar. It is starting to dominate the landscape, especially agronomically, and it's coming for you horticulturally. It's the most difficult grass by far and away to control. We need to prevent it from getting established on you. But if you look at crabgrass across the top, Roundup, complete control, Liberty, because the grass was quite large. If it's small, Liberty will get a 3 or 4 inch grass. Most of the time, you guys, unfortunately, are not spraying 3 to 4 inch grasses. They're bigger than that. So we didn't get great control. Liberty plus Roundup, you can see, is not nearly as good as Roundup alone, but better than Liberty alone, right? So it's antagonistic to one product, it's synergistic to another product or additive. Then if you do the sequential application, all right, goosegrass, you see the exact same scenario. Let's move into a few broadleaf weeds. Grasses and antagonism has been occurring longer than I've been alive, so that's not new. But a lot of times we don't see it with broadleaf weeds. One of your most problematic is purslane. You see the exact same scenario. Now, the weed at the bottom of the slide is one of those on our radar of expanding rapidly, and we're really concerned about it, and my agents are helping us do a lot of great work. But look, it's totally different. Roundup basically drinks, the ragweed parthenium basically drinks the Roundup. Liberty is very, very good. We have never seen a situation where Roundup reduces the activity of Liberty. It doesn't in this case statistically, but there is a neat trend there that we've never seen before, so we will expand with that. But the sequential application, again, is absolutely bulletproof. The last one I'm going to show you, wild radish, is now in about every single field we've got. It is as common as purslane or pigweed. Wild radish is a major, major problem for produce producers, and it's going to become more and more problematic. If you look at this scenario with small wild radish, not burn down size wild radish, but Roundup is very effective. Liberty's not effective at all, and then Liberty plus Roundup is far less effective than Roundup. The sequential application is the best. So I'm going to back up one slide if this will work. If you consider weeds like ragweed parthenium, grasses in general, the best program, hands down, Roundup followed with Liberty or gramoxone. I know you don't want to do it, but it'll make you money. All right. It'll also manage resistance. It'll also manage the seed bank. The seed bank is how you are successful for weed management. Now, if you're doing the tank mix and it's working, you keep going, because you can do things to make the tank mix work and get all your weeds, not just some of your weeds. Some things to think about. And I'm talking about Roundup Liberty, but it can be other things that you're tank mixing. Again, there are positives and there are negatives probably with every single combination. All right, the only non-negative combination I'm aware of is when we mix Roundup with a grass herbicide like Select. I don't think there's anything negative that happens. We improve grass control maybe of some troubling weeds, but that's it. All right, some things to think about. If you like the tank mix, you want to do it with one trip, smaller weed sizes. Nearly impossible if you're going, say, from first crop to second crop plasticulture, but that's what the science says. Number two, and this is important, and I'm going to stress it multiple times, I don't care what kind of crop you produce. If you want to be successful for weed control, it's the residual herbicides. You have to understand the concept of residuals. That is the key to a successful weed management program long term. So if we can get residuals in there, what we do is we reduce the number of weeds that are up we have to kill with a lower population. We also reduce the number that are there so we get better coverage, and they're not all on top of each other, right? So that's important. You don't cut your rate, especially with a product like Roundup. If you're tank mixing, you want to maximize that rate. Coverage, again, is essential. And again, I'll stress to you guys, we're investing a lot of money in the produce crops that you're doing, right? Sometimes I think it's worth an extra trip to go out there and maximize the pest control, right? So that's something that you need to think about. Now, I want to mention this. This is a big deal. You guys, I wish you guys could sit in on some of the work that goes into bringing you these state labels. Now, this is a Georgia label. You would have to check if you're outside the state of Georgia whether or not you've got this. We've had a Chateau, as Ty correctly said, he used Chateau in the row middles, right? We've had a label forever. We were able to move it over to the EZ formulation, so you can use the liquid formulation, but I can't tell you how much time and effort the Georgia fruit and vegetable grower put into this. Nick Sumner from the Department of Agriculture put into this, Valent put into this, and my team put into this, right? There's so many people working for you if you're a producer to bring these tools to you, okay? I want you to know that. So nothing's changed. We got an awesome, awesome label, way higher rate than you need, you can use. Match your rate with what you need so we're not overdoing your budget or putting too many pesticides in the field, right? We got all these uses for plasticulture row metal. Another one I want to bring you up to date, this is good news too. If you are applying a paraquat type product, gramoxone, you should know by now every 3 years you have to go through a training. I've always stressed this is a good training. This is not listening to somebody like me telling you how to apply paraquat. It has nothing to do with that. It's about your safety, the safety of your family, and the safety of those that visit your farm, right? It is all about your safety. It is, to me, a very moving video training. If you have not had it, you need to take it. If it's been more than 3 years, you need to take it. Now, let me tell you what good happened. Last year, the group that was providing this training decided all of a sudden they wanted to charge $25 every time we took the training. Well, that made at least me really, really mad. So I caused a lot of problems at the EPA. Syngenta stepped up. They absolutely stepped up. They moved the whole training over to their platform. In fact, last year they did, how many webinars did we do? A ton of webinars where we hosted growers. And Syngenta actually did the training live for our growers while we transitioned this over to save us $25, right? They didn't have to do that, but they did that. It was awesome. When they're moving this over, there's no charge for the training. It is in English and Spanish, so your Spanish-speaking employees, great opportunity for them. You will have to register and put your name, and the reason we're doing this is actually to help you because you will get an automatic renewal in 3 years. I have been screaming for 7 years. I don't even remember when I took the training. How can you tell me I have to take it every 3 years if you don't help me remember, right? So this is cool. It's happening now. Give us time. We may still run into a blip or two. But again, this is a video you need to apply. Paraquat is an important tool. The only way we keep paraquat, it's not about weed control. It's not about resistance. It's about your safety and the safety of those around you, right? We never, ever, ever, ever take paraquat out of the container you purchase it in, right? Bad news with this one, well, bad news and good news depending on what you want to look at it. If you've been paying attention, the EPA issued an emergency order to stop the use of the pesticide dacthal. And I say this is bad and it's good. It's bad because this is a tool that's very important to seeded onion production or our seed beds. I think the good news is the science behind this supports what the EPA did, right? And again, no matter how important a tool is to you, your safety is more important to us, right? If we have a tool that's important to you but it's not safe for you, it needs to go and we need to replace it. And that's my job and the job of Stormy and Babesh and these others, right? So we need to know if it's not safe to you, not safe to the environment. We don't want it out there. We want to find a better tool, and we can find that better tool working together. All right, so I do want to share a little bit on this. So this is a big deal for your Vidalia onion production. There's no doubt about it. It's one of the biggest challenges. Now, we have looked, Ms. Jenna, I'll introduce my team here in a minute, but we have looked at probably 50, 60, 70 options in seeded onions, and they all kill the onions, and none of them kill the dang weeds I'm trying to kill, other than this one. Now, this is interesting. This is actually labeled. It is labeled. I don't even have to get a label for the onion producer. This is old. It is old. A decade or 2 decades ago, we compared it to dacthal. It couldn't compete with dacthal, so I've never mentioned it. I've never put it in our recommendations or anything. But what is really interesting is something has changed with the label since I first looked at it. When we originally looked at it, it was only for pre-emergence, kind of like a dacthal program. But now the label actually lets us do pre-emergence and post-emergence. And somewhere in here, if you read real closely, you can actually make 3 or 4 post-emergence applications. All right, so immediately as soon as we knew we were going to lose dacthal, which was the same time you did, we had no indication prior to that, we jumped on this to try to figure out what we can do. And just yesterday, these are Miss Jenna's ratings, not my ratings. She was making me spray. If you look at primrose, I have tons of weeds, right? But I have 2 major problems. I have primrose and I have radish. This is an example on primrose. If we go pre-emergence with Nortron following the label, only about 50% control out about a month. If we go post-emergence, we're at 80. If we go pre and post, we're at 90. And remember, I can actually go pre, post, 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 post. Now, I don't want to do all that. All right, this also has no other tool in the toolbox, right? I do have stuff like the yellow herbicide that I can use post. I got some low rates of gold I can use. I've done nothing else, all right? So what I'm telling you is we had a product. It was important. It's gone. I wish we'd had 2 years to replace it before it's gone. I don't, so we're going to move fast. And I'm excited about where we're at. I've got down here in the bottom right corner, what about injury? We didn't have a perfect stand this year, so I'm a little uncomfortable on our ratings. We're seeing no impact on the stand that we have, but you don't like to make a suggestion to a grower with having confident data on that, so we got to do that. And then I don't know about wild radish. If I can't, I've got to pick up wild radish or we're not going to be able to do the seeded stuff with our herbicide scenario. So I know we're in a pesticide update section. I'm going to go a little off rail here, but my reasoning for going a little off rail is to protect pesticides. you should know, and I know most of you already know, you can't just spray, 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 spray. We have to have a holistic approach. We have to be creative. We have to be dynamic. We need to protect our herbicide tools, whether that's from regulatory challenges or from resistance, et cetera, right? So what I want to stress to you is in the world of weed control, not just agronomically, also horticulturally, a tremendous effort is going into looking at alternatives to herbicides or pesticides to bring into a holistic system. It makes you better no matter what it is. Now let's be clear when it comes to weed control. There is no comparison in cost or efficacy to a good herbicide. No comparison. But that good herbicide is not going to stay if we're not better than just applying it, right? So that's what it's about. I want to justify it because I'm going to show you a little bit of data that we did with Carbon Robotics. I'm not sure if they're in here. Phenomenal to work with. We've had the best time working with them. And the laser weeder. And the reason I'm showing this right with my onion discussion is we did an onion trial. For 25 years, I have never been able to pick seeded onions because of wild radish and primrose. All right, and I want to show you the results of this study. We just concluded it not long ago with the laser weeder that we did over at the Vide Onion Farm. I don't think Chris Tyson's here. He was critical of this as well as Carbon Robotics. Very brief example, but I do want to show you. I had only 4 treatments is all I'm sharing with you today. Nothing. The laser weeder, Carbon Robotics ran for me November, December, January. Versus my herbicide program. Now, my herbicide program is over on the right, but I want to stress to you, see Dacthal. I did this before they pulled Dacthal from the market. So I still had Dacthal at the time we did the study. But look at my effort. Look at how many times I had to go to Vidalia to spray something, right? I like to die with that. So then the herbicide program plus the laser weeder. So this is cool. Now, I'm a weed guy. I'm a herbicide guy. But I absolutely love what we learned through this. Now, I'm just showing you late season control because this needs to be simple. On your left, I have no primrose control in the check. My full herbicide program, it does pretty good for about 6 weeks, and then it falls to pieces. So I have 11% whole control of primrose with my herbicide program. That laser weeder, again, set up by Carbon Robotics by people who know how to run it, not me, did an outstanding job. And this was really cool to watch. No weed control. We really didn't have a lot of onions. My herbicide program, they're bigger than you would think. But again, remember, early season weed competition is what is important when you're producing a crop. We don't want any weeds anytime. And later weeds may influence your harvestability. But as far as competition on the crop, man, the first 6, 8, 10 weeks of that crop, you at least can get something out of it. But obviously no comparison right whatsoever, right? So we can do some really, really cool things working with groups like Carbon Robotics and weed control and laser technology. Always opportunities to go. I want to mention, though, here's an example in transplant onions. It's funny. Seeded onions is the most difficult weed control program there is for me. Very difficult. I can't be successful. Transplant onions is my easiest. It's actually, to me, easier than cotton and some of the other crops, right? But there was no benefit from the laser weeder in transplants for production. Now, no injury. Technology worked exactly how they wanted it to work. Really cool to see as a systems approach. I could reduce herbicides, no doubt whatsoever. I think that's the future. When I retire and return to the farm in North Carolina, man, I would love to put my residuals out, send a robot out to kill my weeds that escape my residuals. I think that would be a neat program in the future. All right, a couple of other things before we switch over to ESA. I get surprised all the time. All the time I get surprised. I'll come up with a hypothesis. I'll think I know something, and I'm wrong all the time. So I ground myself quite often. One of the things that I was completely wrong on, and I'm setting you guys up, is this paper mulch. Now, I'm actually not going to share with you our data. John Bennett's going to share with our data. John, I don't know if John's in here, but I think it's in the watermelon section after lunch. All right. They're going to share our data on how herbicides interact with the paper mulch, how the paper mulch interacts with nutsedge, your most problematic pest, right? But I will just tell you, I totally missed it. The data is exciting. We'll do a lot more work with it. John will share that later. I would encourage you, if you're interested in paper mulch and or nutsedge, that you would want to visit his presentation after lunch. A couple of more things, and then I'll be quiet. These are kind of the weeds I've got on my radar. Obviously, I've got traditional weeds, but these are the weeds that are really working us over. Purslane is the most common call I'm getting now. Nutsedge is a major problem. This ragweed parthenium, you need that on your radar. It's expanding greatly. And then Ty's still got some significant problems with alligator weed that we need to do some more work on. We haven't done work on all that because I've had so many regulatory challenges, but I will give you a little bit of data update on a couple things. I wanted to highlight purslane. I showed you last year this slide if you were here. Residuals. Look at all the effective residuals. I don't need to do work on this, man. We've done work on this for 30 years, all right? So we know how good the residuals are. You put them out, you get them activated before the weed comes up, we're good to go, all right? I do want to add this because we learned a lot post-emergence-wise. There are a few things that work post-emergence-wise on purslane, right? That's your problem. That's why you're struggling with it. We do have a few products by itself, but here's what I wanted to highlight. The work we did with Josh Dawson down in South Georgia this year. Roundup followed by gramoxone, Roundup followed by Liberty is the ticket. And I showed you the Roundup Liberty data. I mean, it's absolutely the ticket to control this pest. If you're not going to get it with the residual, which you should get it with the residual. I want to share, and this is just general sharing. This is not specific to produce growers, just general sharing of what we're learning on ragweed parthenium. This is a really, really neat weed, and I'm glad our agents have identified this. All the work that we're doing is with agents. We're not doing any of it on the station. This is kind of where we're at today, and this is our generating data component. We're not where we want to be. Every scientist will tell you, I got to have a lot of studies. We're not there. But generating data for us in the state of Georgia, Liberty, the full rate, very good. The literature supports that, so I feel really good about that one. Roundup, ours is very bad, but there's actually literature out of the home state of North Carolina that shows they've got a population Roundup's pretty good on. I don't know how that's possible because ours is nothing, is absolutely nothing. These next two obviously are not for a vegetable grower, but I'm just sharing you information. Roundup plus dicamba and Roundup plus 2,4-D. If you look down at the graph, I'm actually showing you the data we generated with Josh just a few months ago. I've got ragweed parthenium 4 inches, 7 inches, and 10 inches. The yellow bar represents Roundup plus 2,4-D. The blue bar represents Roundup plus dicamba. Dang if Roundup dicamba ain't flipping phenomenal on this stuff. Absolutely phenomenal. It does not help you as a produce grower. And if you go putting dicamba out in your vegetable field, don't call me because I'm not coming to see all the damage you got, right? I'm just sharing information for you if you rotate to a crop where you can use these. Command pre, our work is very good. The literature is very good, says it's very good. Our work with Valor Chateau, directly related to your rate, right? Your row middle rate is totally different than your sweet potato rate. So depends on what rate you're using or how good it is. That is also supported by the literature. Now, I wanted to add this from the literature. We've done none of this. But the literature, dual, prowl, gramoxone, basicran, atrazine, they're no good. This is why this weed is spreading so rapidly, right? That's why that glufosinate label that we're trying to expand is so critical, but it will get resistance really, really quickly, right? And resistance, of course, means you spray it too many times without other mitigation measures, and then all of a sudden the tool doesn't work for you. All right, last two slides before we move into ESA. This is just the same slide I showed you last year, concept if you're a producer or you're helping a producer. From where I sit, there are really 4 areas that you could change the game with those that are struggling in weed management. The concept of overlapping residuals is essential. I don't care what crop you grow if you're in the southeast. You have to understand how valuable the residuals are, and before one residual breaks down and you get weeds flush out, you apply another residual and you get it activated. That concept works. That also is usually the least injurious approach. Grass control, you guys drive me nuts on grass control. You don't want to get 2 to 3% injury, but you won't go as early as you need to go so we can get the rate down and not put the adjuvant. Select max. Again, I'll encourage you to look at those labels. If you're timely, we can do it. Take the grass out early, which you need to do. We can tell you biologically, even when you plant, when the grass is going to be 2 to 3 inches. I can tell you right now, if you put your grass herbicide out there somewhere between 17 and 21 days, you're going to be good to go, right? But unfortunately, a lot of you wait. Hooded sprayers, we're going to bring you tons of tools, hopefully, after we get through ESA for row middles. You need a hooded sprayer to put row middle applications out. And then again, Chateau in the row middle of plasticulture is an absolute game changer. But I want to share this with you. When we talk about putting residuals out agronomically, for 20 years, we have never discussed putting a single residual out. We always put 2 residuals out that are effective on the most problematic pest every single time. Now, I haven't done that a lot in horticultural. Why? Because you ain't had 2 residuals to put out. But since we're expanding that list, it's time to start talking about this. Now, these may or may not be products that are relevant to you. I'm making a point. This is the number of pigweed at 21 days after applying these products. The left 3 bars are a single product and their rate. The right 3 bars are a combination of these, and I actually can reduce the rate. And this is the number of pigweed again. So I can take 2 products that are effective in this example on pigweed, put them together. The 2 products are far more effective than a single product, even if the rate is lower for the product when I do the combination. It works every time, and every herbicide we have experimented with for 20 years, again, mostly agronomically, but it's something for you to start thinking about with the concept of overlapping residuals. All right, so how's my time? Time good? Okay, all right. So this is going to work good because the next, I'm hoping you'll stay for this section. This section is going to be different. Will you pull it up for me, Justin, while I kind of give a layout? So what we're going to do with this next session, well, let me take, anybody got a quick weed? Again, I don't want you guys to leave because this is going to be very important. Is anybody got a quick weed control question before we move into, yes? Spanish needle, I personally have not and have not gotten a call. Has any of my agents had more problems with Spanish needles? Anybody? No, that's good to know. We need to know. Any other weed control? So great question about ragweed parthenium. It has been in Florida for eternity, absolute eternity. And it seems to have been creeping up. And you know what? We've been dealing with it for 5 to 10 years at least, but it seems to be expanding very, very rapidly. And when it comes in, the population goes from nothing to insanity just like that. It's really fascinating. And you kill everything else, and that's the only thing left. And then it comes up late, and there ain't a thing you can do about it. Yep. So we're working on it. Any other questions or comments real quick? Yeah. Yeah. Great question. What's your interval for the Roundup Liberty? All right, in my perfect world, 5 to 7 days. If you get me in a bad situation, I only got 3, let's do 3. But I like 5 to 7 days because I want to allow, remember, Roundup is systemic. I want the Roundup to move throughout the plant, then I want to come in with the Liberty, right? But now you got to think about this. It's not that simple, right? So if we've got grasses, that's a great program. But let's say you have glyphosate-resistant Palmer amaranth, right? Palmer amaranth will grow 2 inches per day. We can't wait 5 days to put the Liberty out, right? So we either got to go with a combination or go with the Liberty then. So you have to be smarter than just, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. You got to be able to play it. But in a perfect scenario, if I don't have some broadleaf that's going to take me over and I can hold my Liberty for Ogramox home for 5 days, absolutely phenomenal program. Phenomenal program. All right, any other questions? All right, now we're getting ready to do an interactive. I'm going to do an introduction, but then we're going to do an interactive scenario. You guys in the back, come sit down. All you agents, all my agents, if y'all will come help me, we are going to pass you out a handout. I'm not kidding. We're going to interact. You're going to write stuff down. And we're going to go through this process in a unique way. You can go ahead and start. I want to introduce 3 or 4 people that are going to help me do this as we go. Miss Jenna Vance is here with me. She's with my program. Dr. Singleton, will you come help pass stuff out too? Dr. Singleton is a major part of this program and going to be the success of this. And then all of our county agents are absolutely essential. What we're going to do is we're going to give you a handout of what we're going to do together through this presentation. I'm going to take about 10 minutes to give you an introduction, and then we're going to work through this together. Now, this is designed for you growers. But if you're not a grower, you're a pesticide provider, you're a consultant, you have to know how to do this because we have to help the grower go through this process without any burden on them. They've got enough burden, right? We have to remove all the burden other than we need a little bit of their time to help them understand what we're doing. All right? So again, I'm not kidding. This is an interactive. You're going to be writing stuff down, and then you're going to have any questions. Also, if you need a pen, we have about 100 pens. Just let those around you know. Our agents also will be scattered out and about. So if I'm going along and something's confusing and you don't want to holler at me, you holler at them because they will absolutely holler at me. All right? All right, I'm going to take about 30 seconds and let's get all these handouts out and then we'll get started. Any other quick questions for me, Babesh, or Ty/Stormy Jr.? So his question is, are you changing the watermelon program? The watermelon program, again, I am not changing it. For me, if you have the ability to do it, I want to do Reflex, Sinbar, and your yellow herbicide. That is an amazing combination, but I'm going to tell you what, the biggest problem I've had this winter so far, carryover. So you guys need to look at the freaking carryover. If you're a peanut grower and you put Strong Arm out, don't call me because you messed up, okay? If you put Cadre and Strong Arm out, you messed up twice, right? So you got to be smart about these herbicides. So with that, I'm telling you, check the Reflex rotational restriction and check the Sinbar rotational restriction. All right, so everybody got a handout. And again, I promise we're going to go through it together. I'm going to give you a quick introduction. Does anybody need a pen to write with? You guys want to come sit down? What you need? Pen? And this is John. He's going to share the paper mulch. I'm telling you, that paper mulch stuff is cool. It blew me away. All right, I'm going to get started. Again, let me say a couple of more introductions. I'm introduced you to my team. Is Nick Sumner here? Nick didn't make it. Oh, he's in the back. Where you at? Come here. At least stand up. Nick Sumner. That is the Georgia Department of Agriculture man that works with us every day. He is awesome. He is an integral part of this. And the last slide is designated just for him. And if I'm wrong, he's going to correct it for me, okay? This guy's awesome. Take the opportunity. We can't do anything with a pesticide without the support from the Department of Agriculture, okay? Not a thing. So he's critical. Also, Crop Life America. Rebecca, did you make it?
She'd go home early.
Oh, she had to go with the weather? Okay. But Crop Life America is, I can't stress enough, their help and support for the farmer through this process. They've let me work with them. I can't thank enough the team we put together. This team is unbelievable. It has grower groups. It has industry. It has scientists. It has everything. Okay, so I can't stress enough. I'm sharing a lot of stuff with you today, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. All right, again, I'm going to give you about a 5 or 10 minute introduction, and then we're going to work through what you have in front of you together. Now, last year, if you were here, you heard from the top dog, Jake Lee, and he basically said, if we don't do something about ESA, you're going to lose your products to the court system. This is true because we have lost product and uses to the court system through ESA. He was not lying to you. The other part of that I will add, though, the challenge is as the EPA addresses the ESA, how do we do it in a way that they don't overwhelmingly regulate us to death, right? If we have a product but we can't use it, what have we accomplished? So the goal has been to try to find the middle line. If you look at what the EPA scientists want to do, I give them credit. Very few people give them credit, but I give them credit. Their goal, the goal of the concept for the Endangered Species Act is pretty simple. We want to ensure the pesticides are applied on target and they remain there. That is our same goal in the state of Georgia. That is why we've been using pesticides wisely with the Department of Agriculture for 10 years, right? So this goal is a great goal and is something we all should be willing to work together to achieve. Now, unfortunately, and I would say this even if Jake was here, unfortunately, their initial approach to address ESA was a complete and utter disaster. It would have eliminated our farm, and it would have eliminated likely every farmer's farm that's in this room. It was truly, truly that bad. No chance of my farm surviving. No chance. 252 years old, right? No chance. All right, kudos to the EPA from listening to us when we're screaming at them. And I say we, it ain't just me, it's all of those people I talked about. CLA, all your grower groups, the Vegetable Commodity Commission, the vegetable growers, right in the middle of all of it representing you. The EPA responded in a way that's something you have to give them credit for. Last year, Jan was here to talk to you. There's Jake. They've been in Georgia 5 times in the last 3 years. They've been all over the country listening and learning. One of the most impactful meetings I've ever sat in my life, some of you were sitting in last year. This is it. This is, you guys didn't know we were taking a picture of you. But it was at this meeting right around the corner. And in the front of the room is Jake and Jan talking to some of our top growers and being very bluntly open about what has to happen. I saw a bunch of growers gaining respect for the challenges the EPA has to deal with, and I saw the EPA gaining a tremendous amount of respect for growers and the challenges that they have to deal with if they're going to feed the world, right? So it was moving to see this happening. The positive from this and our interaction with the regulatory agencies, not just the EPA, but Fish and Wildlife, has been monumental. And we have seen a massive change in the last 1 to 2 years from what was proposed to what we're at now. I don't want to say final, because it will never be final as long as we work together. We will continue to prove. But where we're at today. What you saw is you saw an improved approach from actually understanding where the species, these endangered and threatened species, are. Where are they at? Where are our farm fields at? Where are we applying pesticides? Right? If you're going to protect the species, you got to at least know where the species is and where our fields are. If you can't do that, which I would argue we're not very good at 2 or 3 years ago, how are you going to be successful? Right? So we've changed that. We got to have mitigation options for runoff and buffer mitigations. You've got more credit. You've got more options. All right? And that's what we're going to work through today. That is a result to your interaction with the U.S. EPA and our other regulatory partners. So what you have seen change very rapidly, which is not usually the case in the regulatory world, you have seen a massive increase in the flexibility of the regulations that are going to be placed on us, but you have also seen an increase in complexity. All right, so remember, when you fuss at me about how complex this is, I am going to fuss back at you about how great you were as growers communicating with the EPA that we needed flexibility. All right? So we did this together, so we're going to work through the complexity together. All right, that's what I wanted to stress with that. All right, now don't die on this slide. I want to show you how complex this could potentially be, and then before you pass out, I'm going to provide you the opportunities of how we can work together to come to a solution for this. All right, this is real deal. All right, these numbers are real. It took me weeks to do this. I'm going to give you an example of how complex this potentially could be with the one assumption: every single pesticide will have ESA restrictions on them in the future. They don't today, but as we move through the regulatory process, every single one of them, it may be nothing, it may be a lot, but they will all have it on it. So I wanted to know how many calculations, right, how many buffer calculations, how many runoff calculations will you and I have to make on the farm? All right, I've given you 2 examples. The top example is our very small farm in northeastern North Carolina. We grow 5 agronomic crops. We have 40 fields. We applied 30 pesticide active ingredients in 2024. If every single product had a restriction on it this year that I use, I would have to make 372 runoff calculations, 372 drift buffer calculations, and I didn't even add on here, I will have to look at Bulletins Live 2 for 372 different pesticides. All right, so you do the math. That is a very, very small farm. If you look at one of our more dynamic farms in the state of Georgia, 26 unique vegetables, bunch of agronomic crops, tons of vegetable fields, right? And remember, when you do 3 crops on one field in 3 years, that's really 3 fields, so the numbers go really bad or really high really quickly. 78 pesticide active ingredients. This farm would have to make 4,344 runoff calculations, 4,344 drift calculations, and look at Bulletins Live 2 for potential restrictions on all of that, right? And again, this is the real deal. We did the crop by pesticide. Everything is the real deal. All right, now that's alarming, right? That's scary. How would you do that? All right, this is what I want to stress to you. You're going to have help if you're a grower. My goal, at least in the state of Georgia, is you as a grower, you're not going to face any burden other than a little bit of time of working with your helper. I am hoping your helper is going to come from many different areas. We're in. Extension's in. Our agents are amazing. They're going to continue and add this to kind of the UPW approach that we've done. We're in. We're committed. We're going to make it work. We have to have our consultants, our retailers, our manufacturers, and we've got the department. Nick's in, so he's in. So we're all in. But here's what you have to remember. This is complicated, and we are also learning, right? So we are not experts. We will have to become experts together. But you have help to help you. And let me stress to you, going into 2024, I'm going to focus on herbicides. But for 2025, for 2025 unless I get surprised. Restrictions are really on 3 products that you won't use in the produce industry, all right? So we have quite some time to figure the process out, but you have to start because we have some heavy hitters, glyphosate, 2,4-D, stuff like that, that are atrazine, that are coming through that are going to happen quickly. So we don't need to be caught off guard. That's why we're running through this workshop/exercise today. All right, before we go through our examples, there are 3 things you have to get on your radar that you have not had on your radar before. All right, number 1, well, all 3 of them, then I'll define them. You have to be thinking about runoff differently, particle drift differently, and BL2, Bulletin's Live 2. All right, you have to understand, we have to know what this means. Again, we're going to help you. Runoff, each pesticide when it goes through registration or re-registration from this point forward, and I should back up and stress, herbicide strategy is completed. That's why I'm talking about herbicides. Insecticide strategies coming in March, fungicide strategies coming after that, right? So once the strategies are complete, then when the labels go through registration or review, then it will meet these guidelines. And why I said earlier I'm a little bit excited, herbicide strategy is finally complete, we can move forward. We can start trying to figure out how to bring you new tools, right? So it's actually a good thing. It needs to happen, but it has to happen in the right way. So for runoff, each pesticide will be assigned a value on it as far as how many mitigation measures we have to have. So every product will have a runoff mitigation required value. Particle drift, every product will have a buffer, an infield buffer. All right? A field buffer, not an infield buffer. You can extend it. So a field buffer. And then every product you will be advised you have to go to see Bulletin's Live 2. All right, now let me expand on that. For runoff, our points will range between 0 and 9. All right, so if you have to have 9, then that requires more mitigation measures. That will be our example we'll go through in a minute. If you have a 0, a 1, or a 2, probably not very likely, but a 3 will be likely. All right, we have to meet those requirements. For a ground rig, I am focusing on a ground rig because I'm hoping you're applying your herbicides with a ground rig. If you are not, and you're applying them with an air blast or something else, please see me after this meeting. We need to talk. So for my example today, I have to stress, don't get confused. There are different requirements for application. If you're doing aerial, it's different. If you're doing air blast, it's different. I am going to go through our example on a drift ground application because I'm a herbicide guy, and that's what you need to be doing. All right? It is going to range between 0 and 230 feet. So worst case scenario, we should have a worst case of 230-foot buffer. And then I mentioned you have to check Bulletin's Live 2 Live to see if you have a pesticide use limitation area. All right, why is this important? Why do you have to check it? If you are in an area where a species is more vulnerable to your pesticide application, you will have additional restrictions. Now, we've already seen this in the agronomic world with the dicamba formulations, but you potentially would have increased points for runoff. So I'm making this totally up. Let's say we have product X. It's 3 points for you and me, not in the pooler, but if you're in the pooler, you have 6 points you have to meet. You have to do extra things to protect that species because that species is near your field. Same scenario with points for I just did runoff, so points for buffer. You know, I might have a 150 buffer, you got a 210 buffer. All right, now I want to say this, I have to say this, but I don't want you to freak out. There is a potential to remove the tool. If you're in one of the most vulnerable areas of the planet, you could potentially remove the tool. I do not want you to get that in your head today. What I want you to think about there, we will know that before you. And if you run into a product, at least in our state, where you would potentially remove the tool, we will work with Fish and Wildlife and other regulatory agencies well ahead of that. So even though that can happen, and I'll give you an example of that happening, I don't want you to stress out about that part. Let's just focus on getting our points, getting our mitigation measures, and getting you on target. All right, I want to give you, I told you, 3 products that are out that have restrictions. There's only one out since the latest release of the herbicide strategy, and that is Liberty Ultra. Liberty Ultra came out really, really well for us, all right? So for runoff, you've got 3 points you have to meet for mitigation. For buffer, it's a 10-foot. Now, the way they got it for 10 foot is they require on the label you cannot be more than 24 inches above the canopy when you apply it, and you must use a coarse to larger droplet. That's how they got it down so good, but you can deal with the 10 foot. BLT, there are no restrictions to anybody in the state of Georgia except for Keith's in here. He's got one spot up here. You cannot apply Liberty Ultra. You cannot also apply Enlist 1 or Enlist Duo. It is because of this species that is one among the 27 most vulnerable species. All right? Now, Keith, we're working with Keith. We don't believe there's an agronomic field in there. But that's an example. If something like that happens, we'll know it ahead of time. We will address that. So you don't worry about that. I do not want you stressing out about I'm not going to have the tool. All right, so we're getting ready to walk through our exercise. Here's my objectives. All right, I want to get you to 9 points for all of your fields to avoid you having to go look at every flipping label to see, is this a 3, is it a 5, is it a 6, is it a 9? Think about if you're mixing 3 products, you got to go check every time. My goal is to get you to a 9. I'm not saying we're going to get you to a 9 today, but my goal is to get you a 9 before this impacts you. Objective 2, I want to take 230 foot down to 0. Because if I take 230 foot down to 0 impacting your production, then I don't have to worry about it, right? So that's our goal, so we don't have to do 4,000 calculations every time we want to go apply a product. But number 3 is most important, and I'm using you as a guinea pig, and I'm very honest. We have a really, really unique relationship right now with the EPA that I cherish. We are working with them weekly. I am not kidding. Weekly to make this process as good in the science world of making sure we protect you on the farm and the endangered species and everybody else, but also making sure you have the tool. All right? So I need your help and your guidance, just like we've done, on making sure that if there's something we can't do or something that's stupid or we need to change or there's literature you don't understand, we need to know because we can work with them and get it fixed. We truly can get it fixed. We need to fix it now versus later. If you will notice with ESA, this is a totally different concept than we've done my entire career. What have we done my entire career on the farm? We do nothing. A regulation is placed on a tool. The tool is gone. Then we all get together and scream and holler and try to get it back. This is the opposite approach. Let's get it right before it ever happens so the burden is not placed on our family farms. All right, now we're going to go through 2 examples. You should have 3 sheets of your handout. Your first sheet, hopefully on the top, talks about raised bed plasticulture. Your second sheet is bare ground tilled. And your third sheet will be a survey that I'm hoping you're willing to fill out when we get done. I am going to walk through these with you today. Now let me stress to you, we will have to do every field on your farm. All right, every field. But we can group fields. All right, so start thinking about it. But today for this exercise, just think about one field. So if you're a farmer, you think about one field. If you're an advisor, you think about one field. Just let's do it first on one field. I will tell you right now, I did our family farm. We have 40 fields. I did it on 2 sheets. I had 36 sheets. I met my mitigations. 36 fields, I met my mitigations on one approach. 4 fields I met on the second approach. All right, so you're not going to have to do 150 of these, right? But you got to start on step 1. We're going to start on step 1. All right. You also have to do it for each production process. So if you're an agronomic grower, you're going to see me in a cotton meeting. I'm going to do it totally different. Totally different. All right. Now, it was interesting that I'm going to do the raised bed plasticulture, which should be your first sheet. And over on the right, you'll see points. All right. Now, if you're not a raised bed plasticulture guy, but you're teal background, you can hold off to number 2. But look, this is important. I'm going to go through these definitions that a lot apply to you in the second example. I'm not going to spend the same amount of time defining them. So pay attention on the first example, even if you're not plasticulture. I want to start off with the great news. Absolutely great news. If you are injecting a fumigant below that plastic, we're good. We're exempt. We're never going to talk about it again. Fumigants are good. How about that with all the struggles we've had with fumigants? That is good. So that's gone. So we are talking about herbicides. All right? You will eventually deal with insecticides and fungicides. All right, now again, remember your goal, I want to get you to 9 points. The second thing I will stress is 2 years ago, about half of what's on this slide as potential options was not there. The other thing I want to stress with you, this is not all of the options. These are the options that I have selected out that I believe apply to you. But there are more options, and I'm going to show you when we get done of how you can go look at the other options that are available. I can't go through 45 options in the time that we have. All right. So, I got challenged on Monday when I did a cotton meeting and said, you're talking about all these points. Where are these points coming from? You making this crap up? That was Tim Flanders, by the way. That sounds just like Tim, right? No, I'm not making this stuff up. This stuff is coming from a calculator we were able to cooperate with the EPA to do some stuff with. If you want to see the calculator itself or see it operate, we'll hang around after and show you how to do that. But it's all coming from US EPA information. You can get every bit of it. You don't have to have the link. You can even search it. And I would encourage you to do that, and I will encourage you as we go forward. All right, number one on your handout, mitigation relief points. You have no input whatsoever on this number of points. All you can do is take advantage of that depending on your state. Here's an example of, and I'm going to show you other states in a minute. An example of Georgia, if you're in yellow, you get a 0. You have to put a 0 down. If you're blue, you get a 2. If you're green, you get a 3. All right. I know we have people from other parts of the country in here. If you're not from one of these 4 states, then see me after. I can get you your number. But you write down whatever point, that one field. I know you got to do multiple counties in the future, but write down that one field and write your points. Everybody got that? No big deal there, right? You don't get to change that. In the calculator, you put your state, your county, and it tells you the same thing I'm showing you. Field slope. Is your field slope less than 3%? If it's less than 3%, you write a 2 down. If it's more than 3%, you do not write a 2 down. You can land level, laser level, or smooth. The EPA doesn't care as long as when you apply the pesticide, you're below 3%. Do you have a sand, loamy sand, or sandy loam? If you are, you write a 2 down. 50% sand, loamy sand, or sandy loam as defined by the EPA. This is critical now. Just because you see a mitigation measure, you do not get to make your definition up. You have to use the definition that's here. But again, the EPA has allowed us to work with them. I think we're on target. If we're not on target, let us know, and we'll work through those. All right, everybody's got that, right? Now remember, I got to get to 9 points. These are my points for the pondiform. I'm feeling pretty good so far. Irrigation water management. Remember, I'm focused on plasticulture production right now. If you have below ground drip tape, you write a 3 down. If for some reason you did a poor job laying your drip tape and your drip tape's on top of the ground, you write 2 points. Let's hope you are all writing 3 points. All right, this one's a little bit confusing, and I got to put a little examples in here. What about cover crops? Agronomically, this is a big deal. So I was able to help write the definition of cover crops agronomically, and when I wrote the definition, I was thinking about cotton, and I was also thinking about you guys putting it in road middles of plastic. I'm not sure the EPA had the same concept. I emailed them yesterday. I have not heard back. So in my idea, this one could change, but in my idea, if you put your fumigate in the fall like we've got you doing, or early winter, you put a cover in the middle, and we don't kill that cover to like what Ty was saying, you will get 3 points. All right? So for the purposes of today, unless we get back with you that this won't count, you will put a 3 down for a long duration cover. There are points for short duration and tilled covers as well, if that fits you, but you're not doing that in plasticulture. All right, grass waterway. This is something a lot of us should have around our vegetable field. Maybe this will spur you to think about doing that. If you have a grass waterway, you can have 2 points. There's the definition. They really didn't go into a lot of definition here, and I didn't add anything to that because I want as much flexibility as I can. If you have a grass waterway, put a 2. If you don't, put a 0. All right, what about a vegetative ditch? I don't know if you see this one in the back corner. We don't have a lot of this, but this is common in Florida. And you can see their definition. Basically, a vegetative drainage ditch is a slope channel planted with vegetation. The big point is the capacity of the ditch must accommodate peak runoff from a 10-year. If you've got that, you can put a point. I know a lot of us don't have that, so you would put a 0. But I thought that was relevant because I have seen that. What about field border, adjacent field border? Now, this is one of these, I love the definition, and you don't ask questions about. All right, this says a field border is a strip of permanent vegetation established at the edge of the field, downslope. You maintain it to eliminate or significantly reduce flow. Unless my buddy from the Department of Agriculture tells me I'm wrong, my interpretation with this example would be, if I've got pine trees, they're pretty permanent, and if I let the pine straw and the limbs fall, that is definitely reducing the flow. That's a pretty good option. And if I have 20 to 30 feet, I get 1 point. If I have 30 to 60 feet, I get 2 points. If I have greater than 60 feet, I get 3 points. Last one, mitigation tracking. If you write this down and you provide it to our friends at the Department of Agriculture, if they show up, you get a point for mitigation tracking. All right, now I'm thinking You should have just blown 9 out of this world, and if you blew 9 out of this world, we're in really, really good shape. All right, if you did not blow 9 out of this world, we have a lot of other measures we can also do, but I don't want to have to do them because it takes my time, your time, and Extension's time, right? So here's an example of rate of product applied, right? So if you look at rate of product applied, if you're not using the maximum rate of product applied, we can get credit. Now, this is not the amount you apply in a given application, it's for the year. Most of you don't understand, at least now, and there's no reason you would understand how much product you can use for the entire year. So we will have to help you, but I'll give you an example of what we can do with it, and also percent of field treated in a plasticulture system, just to get you thinking, okay? So, application rate. You get credit when you use lower than the maximum for the year. Not for the application, but for the year. I have you a Chateau label where you can use 8 ounces per crop in the row middle, right? If you use 4 ounces, which is all I think you need, you just got 2 points. So anything we apply in the row middle, we should be bulletproof on. If we only treat 50% of the field, we get 3 points. So I got 2 points if I'm putting Chateau in the row middle because I'm only using 4 ounces instead of 8. I got 3 points because I'm banding, right? So we're sitting really, really good there. All right. Now I'm hoping you got points, but I'm going to survey you before we end. But let's move to the one that's a little more complicated, and we're going to go quicker now, all right, because I'm not going to find everything again. This one I think is going to be one of the hardest ones for you, and it's one of the most important ones for you. If you're tilled ground center pivot irrigation, can we get you to 9 points? All right. What I have done on my slide, not on your slide, is I have highlighted what has changed between this production practice and the plasticulture. Irrigation water management, we have to look at it differently because you're not putting drip tape. We're using a center pivot. We're not going to do cover crops for most of you in produce, but you may have terraces. All right. So real quickly, I'm going to hit a couple of things, but I'm going to highlight those, and we're going to go through this. Again, do your numbers because I bet every single one of you farmers have this scenario. All right, I'll remind you of this. Write your points down. You can't influence this. I will point out, I am from North Carolina. I do not like this right here. See that gray area? That gray area is a 0. We get no points. Scientifically, that does not make sense to me. That is on the list of things we need to do, but I can promise you it's kind of toward the bottom, right? So there are areas and places we need to work on. All right, incorporation. I changed irrigation management for your drip tape to incorporation. Now, this is something you got to think about. So I'm going to say this clearly. You got to be creative, and you have to understand how this works. If you're creative and you have the knowledge, we're going to have the ability. But you got to put forward the effort. For products not requiring incorporation, all right, Treflan requires incorporation. Eptam requires incorporation. I can't even remember if Solan requires. But if it only requires it, you can't put it pre-emergence, you can't put it post-emergence. If that's the only use pattern is incorporation, you can't get a point because it's already used in the process. But for example, if you spray Select or you put Reflex Pre, right? We have different use patterns. If you will cut the pivot on in 24 hours, I'll take the beating on that. We suggested 24 hours. Why? Because I want you to activate my dang herbicide. But if you activate the herbicide in 24 hours, the other one in here is you have to move to a depth of 1 inch. Do not worry about the 1 inch today. Dr. Singleton and I will do some data to protect you. You irrigate it as you need to irrigate it to maximize your production to feed the world. Okay? We will work on that. But you can get a point. So you can't get the drip stuff, but you can get a point if you will cut the pivot on to activate that herbicide within 24 hours, which is what we want you to do. Terraces, I left waterways up for you if you want to see waterways again. Terraces is a little more defined than waterways. Terraces, stair-stepping technique, creating a flat crop area having a 3% slope or less. If you have that terrace out there in that field and you fulfill with that, you get your 2 points. All right? So, again, I stressed the field border thing. I'm being really, really creative with the field border. I'm hoping Nick doesn't tell me I got to pull that out. Mitigation tracking, again, if you document it, look, and I'm going to give Nick a minute or two at the end. I think you document it however you want. You can use my sheet, you can use your own sheet, you can use a consultant sheet. It don't matter. You just got to document it and prove that you've mitigated and shown the effort. All right, so do you have 9 points? Right? This one is harder, And if you do not have 9 points, don't stress out because every pesticide is not coming as a 9. In fact, we think 6 is going to be a lot of them. But there will be 1 or 2 that are important to you to a 9. So I want to get you a 9 so we can move on and we don't have to do this for 15 years. Right? That's really what this is about. I want to do this in 2 years, not 15. All right, remember we have other things we can help you with, or you can get the calculator and help yourself. Right? There are other options available. I'm just seeing if I can get you there. All right, now I got to hit a couple things real quick and I'm going to move on. We just did runoff because it's the most complicated. What about drift? When I went into this, I was worried more about particle drift than anything else. I am no longer in that scenario if you will do what you need to do. All right, remember, worst case scenario is 230 feet. If you will use low boom, see it at the top, low boom, 24 inches above the target, have a coarse or larger droplet, which is fine with our herbicides, you can reduce your buffer 75% right there doing what you should do. You should do that, and you get 75%. Now, why should you do that? I've showed you guys in agronomic world this slide a million times. You vegetable growers, I will show it. This is our data in our state. I am showing you the influence of the release point of a herbicide and the droplet size. If you look at the red bar, that is a medium droplet. 48-inch release site on the left, 24 inches on the right above the target. We cut the drift in half. If you look at a bigger droplet, look again, 48 inches versus 24, we cut it in half. You need to get the boom 24 inches above your target. You improve coverage or you improve pest control. Everything about that makes you money, assuming you don't rip the boom off, right? That's the key. And we realize some fields with terraces, the point is get the boom down. Then look at the droplet size. Within each color or across colors, look at medium droplet versus ultra coarse droplet. Now again, we don't need to spray Liberty with the ultra coarse droplet. That's not the point. But if we're coarse to larger and we match the droplet with the pesticide, that's what you need to do. If you have relative humidity over 60%, think we got that one covered, we get 10% reduction in the buffer. If you put a DRA in, you will get 15 to 30% depending on your droplet size. So here's an example. If you do low boom, you should do. If you get your droplet size right, you should do. You got your relative humidity, and we do, I didn't add it in here, and you have your DRA, you got 100%. So we just took 230 down to 0, you don't have to worry about it. But you know what, if you don't want to use a DRA, I don't want you using a DRA. If you don't need it, don't spend the money. We have other options available for you. I'm going to stress this because this is pretty cool. There had been no discussion whatsoever about hooded, this would work for you in row metals, but hooded sprayer or lay-by rig ever at the US EPA until they visited one of our growers. And then all of a sudden it appeared. We had the science, but it was never discussed until they visited with our growers. That's the kind of impact you guys can have. These are all reductions. I highlighted another one. If you have forest or shrubs that are 60 foot wide at least, and they're at least 2 times the height of the 24 inches above target of your boom, 100%. You have a lot of options, right? Most of you, that's 175% reduction right there, but you have to be able to document it. If that's not good enough, there are more options than this. I'm just sharing a few. You can include these areas as part of your buffer. Let's say we ended up with a 50-foot buffer. If I ended up with a 50-foot buffer and I couldn't do anything else about it, if I have ag fields, downwind, roads, grassy areas, yada, yada, this matches my 50-foot, I can use that as my buffer. This was a disaster 2 years ago. Now, I want you to think about it. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a lot of opportunity to get you on target. All right, the second from last slide I'm going to show. Who is in control? My man in the back of the room is ultimately in control. The Department of Agriculture in the state of Georgia is the pesticide authority. The good thing for us is they want education over regulation. They have been every step of the way with us. They can correct us when we're wrong, and we'll work with them when we can. They make an occasional random inspection. But in my experience, this is what's so ironic. The Department of Agriculture usually shows up at your operation when you drifted on somebody. The whole concept of this is to help you not drift, right? So if you get this right, they shouldn't be showing up on your operation unless they just want to say, hey, you're doing a great job, right? But they are the ultimate authority. They will hold you responsible. It will ultimately be their decision, so Nick's word on anything that we say is very, very important. All right, so the last thing I'm going to say, you have a survey on page 3. I need your input to communicate with the EPA. If you, it shouldn't take you but like 3 or 4 minutes. And look, I know you are just being introduced to this today, and this will take some time. But if you will give me the best information you have as you can on that survey, that would be great. Nick, I put you on the spot. You want to come up and say a word or two as we close out? Because I'm telling you, the states that don't have the relationship of research, extension, consultants, manufacturers, pesticide dealers, and the Department of Agriculture are going to struggle with this. We are not. I'm confident we're not.
Well, like Dr. Culpepper was saying, I do value the working relationship that we have in Georgia with our extension and department and produce production folks and industry and everything. And I think that's what allows us to have such a good program across the state. When it comes to ESA and all these coming changes, the approach that we're going to take as far as the department for at least the foreseeable future in the coming year is going to lean towards a compliance assistance and more than just a hard forward regulatory approach, because we want people to understand what's coming and then allow people that opportunity to fix what needs to be fixed, if that makes sense. So that's why we're encouraging people to reach out to your extension office, these people that are learning this, because it's a learning process for everybody. I mean, including our inspectors. All this is new to everybody. So I'll be around if anybody has any questions for me.
All right, any questions for Nick or me? Stay right here. Any questions for either one of us? And let me stress before I take questions, we will stay around until you're all gone, so we'll address questions that way. Also, if you're interested in actually seeing the calculator, Dr. Singleton or myself, I got the calculator on here. We'll throw the calculator up. We'll walk that through. If you're interested in that and you want to see that, we'll do that for you as well. I'll remind you of all the handouts over there. I want to stress to you, Dr. Singleton has a handout that I gave you. I touched the hot spots in my presentation. Her handout on that table on the far right will tell you everything. It'll give you links to the calculator, links to BLT. It's a phenomenal piece of information. Pick one up, take it with you. As you have questions, we'll work through that. Okay, so all of that is available for you. We will not leave until you are gone. Any questions want to be asked? Yes.
So as these products continue to go through re-registration, like you said, there's only 3 right now that technically fall under them.
3 herbicides. I think malathion. I think there's an insecticide or 2 that's got something. But yeah, yeah.
Regardless of the product, regardless of the buffer, there will be ways to get it to 0.
So based on the strategies, the answer to that is yes. Now, what you will see, and this is what I have to learn with you, the manufacturer will have the opportunity to do it their way. Here's an example. Liberty Ultra gave us an example of you have a 10-foot drift buffer. The reason you have a 10-foot drift buffer is because that label requires you to apply it no more than 24 inches above the target. That label requires you to have a course or larger. They've already implemented it for you. But then they give you a block that says if you will put a DRA, you can get down to 0, or you implement these other things. So what you may, it may be misleading. I think the manufacturers will be smart and they want a low number so you don't get excited. But if you have a low number, the label manufacturer will implement them for you and require it. If you have a higher number, it will probably be a manufacturer that allows you the opportunity to do that. You're gonna fry me, but for herbicides, 24 inches is what, it's an educational approach. Again, I don't want you ripping the boom off. And look, if I got a tariff, I might be a little bit higher, but the point is I need to get the boom down, right? But that's what I think is gonna happen, and we will learn together. Yeah.
So the product has one of these labels, do you have to fill all like an FMP? Like we do with fumigant, we have to fill all.
Fumigant management plan. All right, so that is a great point, and that is where this was going to go. And the answer today is no. You actually do not have to document this stuff. It will make your life miserable when this man shows up, but you will get a point if you will document it. And it'll also make this man, if you're in the state of Georgia, and his team very happy, and we want them working with us, and we don't want to be counterintuitive, right? So I would encourage you, do something like I did for you, pick out what works for you, print it out, stick it on a sheet, and then if he shows up 10 years from now, just pull it out from today, right? So, but no, as of today, you will not have to go through the process of the pre-fumigant management plan, the post-fumigant. That's what they wanted to do, and we were able to kind of, too complicated on large scale. So what would you say? So there are, you need to look on the calculator. There are some additives. I don't remember seeing that one, but there's some additional ones. But on your survey, you need to add that in your survey. If it's not in there, Dr. Singleton is going to do some research to expand the options and hopefully expand the points as we move forward. Again, I told you this ain't done. I'm just sharing with you where you're today. So make sure you put that in there, but you need to look at the calculator because there are other options in there. I think we went up to close 40 to 45 different options. I picked like 13 or 14 that I think are relevant to you, but there's other stuff that's available. Your consultant, your local agent will know better than me, or you can get on the calculator yourself. Yep. Any other questions or comments publicly? All right, if you got, oh, I'm sorry, go.
So if you say a grower identifies a field or two and they're kind of having a hard time getting to those
Yep.
points,
Yep.
and you plant some signs on at least 60 feet to get a couple of points, does that get counted immediately, or how long do you have to let those signs go?
By definition, you have to be twice as high as the release point, and you have to be X feet wide depending on what you want. So if you're 60 feet and you're twice as high. So if you and I planted pines or we planted a permanent vegetation, it's got to reach the right height before we release that product to get the credit for it. Make sense? Yep. That's what I stressed earlier. There are requirements for airplanes out just like they are here. I didn't go through those, but they are already provided for herbicide strategy. That is available for you on Taylor's handout. You make sure you get her handout over there. It will define air blast. It will define every bit of that. So if you want to start thinking about what's going to happen to you with air blast insecticides, you get her handout and you look at that because that will start preparing you for insecticide strategy, fungicide strategy. It is different, a little more complex. We need you to help us to identify where the work needs to go because at least our team has focused mostly around how you put herbicides out. And look, we just, the day before the day before New Year's, 2 hours with the EPA, we're developing a new protocol to improve the points, the science behind the points. This is not stopping. We're going to make it better and better, but we need your input. We need to know what works and what doesn't work, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And again, I can't give enough credit to the EPA. They let us be every single part of this. A lot of this is because of growers like are sitting right up here that met with them, right? So we need your input. We need to do it right because once it's done now, right? All right, I'm going to shut up. Will you bring your surveys and not leave them in your seat and put it in one of these two boxes up here? And again, Nick, make sure if you got any questions for Nick, I'll turn it over to you. But if you got any questions for us, we'll be here.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you to all our speakers. This concludes our session. Before you leave, if you need pesticide credits, please remember to scan your name badge. Also, please remember if you want one to pick up the Extension Research Report. It's on the table in the back. Thank you all. Have a good day.